evolution of the evil queen. The 1916 silent movie Snow White was based on the 1912 play Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. In the movie, Queen Brangomar, played by Dorothy Cumming, and the witch are two separate characters, and it is the latter who demands to have the heart of Snow White. In the end, Brangomar is punished by being turned into a peacock. Elements from these versions of Snow White inspired Disney's movie adaptation. The 1933 Snow White is a Betty Boop series cartoon short movie in which the queen resembles olive oil. At one point, her mirror explodes in a puff of magic smoke that changes her into a hideous monster that chases the protagonist until the queen's own former guard grabs the monster's tongue and turns it inside out. In Disney's 1937 animated movie, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, the queen, usually known as the Evil Queen or the Wicked Queen, is the villain. This version of the character was sometimes referred to as Queen Grimhide in Disney publications from the 1930s and was originally voiced by Lucille Laverne. In the movie, similar to the Brothers Grimm story, the queen is cold, cruel, extremely vain, and obsessively desires to remain the fairest in the land. She becomes madly envious of the beauty of her stepdaughter, as well as the attention of the prince from another land. Such a love triangle element is one of Disney's changes to the story. This leads her to plot the death of Snow White, using her dark magic powers to actually transform herself into an old woman instead of just taking a disguise like in the Grimm story, and ultimately on the path to her own demise, which in the movie is indirectly caused by the Seven Dwarfs. In the 1961 movie Snow White and the Three Stooges, the queen is played by Patricia Medina. She is a beautiful but evil woman who wants Snow White to be dead to be the fairest in the world, but the princess is protected by the Three Stooges. When the queen attempts to track down and destroy Snow White by herself, the Stooges spot her flying on a broom and accidentally but happily eliminate her with a magic wish by making her crash and burn. In the 1962 Mexican movie Tom Thumb and Little Red Riding Hood, Snow White's stepmother appears as the Queen Witch, Reina Bruja, the mistress of all evil and the queen of all monsters in the world. The queen looks similar to Disney's Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, but has a green face like Maleficent from Sleeping Beauty. She dies when the Little Red Riding Hood tricks her into falling inside a furnace-like shrine of the devil at her castle. The 1962 East German movie Snow White adapts the fairy tale directly, following the story faithfully up to the very end. When the queen, played by Marianne Christina Schilling, arrives at Snow White's wedding, the prince offers her a half of a red apple, which she assumes is poisoned. Terrified, the queen flees and is chased out of the country by the prince. In the 1980 animated television movie A Snow White Christmas, the Wicked Queen is voiced by Melendi Britt. One day, a large ice block melts, freeing the Wicked Queen, who has been encased within it ever since her defeat. Determined to get rid of the now ruling Queen Snow White and King Charming, as well as their daughter, who is also named Snow White, the queen freezes the entire kingdom. But the young princess escapes alive and enlists the help of the seven friendly giants to stop the queen again. Each time, the queen's attempts to harm the young Snow White with her evil magic are foiled by the new protectors of the princess. Eventually, the queen resorts to disguise herself as an old giant woman to trick Snow White into smelling the scent of a poison flower. Having found Snow White dead, the enraged giants attack the queen's castle, but she summons 7 demons to protect her. Only by a lucky chance does one of the giants, Hicker, cause an earthquake that shatters the magic mirror that was the source of the queen's life and power, and she is finally gone for good, as her spells are broken and all of her victims are returned to life. In the Snow White episode of the 1984 television series Fairy Tale Theater, the queen is played by Vanessa Redgrave. In the end, she is punished by a spell that prevents her from ever seeing her reflection again, which drives the queen to insanity. In the 1987 live-action television special, Disney's Golden Anniversary of Snow White, the Queen is played by Jane Curtin in a parodic scenario. She casts a spell on Grumpy in an attempt to get him to persuade the other dwarfs to retire and destroy the original movie after 50 years. After the failure of this, her mirror convinces her to finally quit this whole cursed business and focus on her current career as a television horror host. The 1987 musical movie, Snow White, was one of the 9 Canon Movie Tales fairy tale musicals produced in the 1980s. Diana Rigg starred as the Queen. The plot follows the story of the original fairy tale, including the 3 attempts by the Queen to kill Snow White. a tight bodice, a poisoned silver comb, and finally the poisoned half of a red and white apple, the white half having no poison in it, in order to trick Snow White into thinking the apple is harmless. When she is invited to Snow White's wedding, the queen damages the mirror in rage, causing her to age rapidly. After arriving at the wedding, she shatters into glassy pieces and disintegrates. In the Snow White episode of the 1987 anime series Grimm's Fairy Tale Classics, the evil queen is voiced by Arlene Bonas in the English dub. While her plans to dispose of her through the huntsman and the purple laces remain intact in this version, she has no magic powers of her own, and the old hag potion and the poison apple are given to her by an old witch who is her ally. As the queen leaves the seven dwarfs' house after Snow White eats the poison apple, she is spotted by Snow White's friend Klaus and the prince, who both chase after her to end her life. But while this version of the queen lacks magic, she has surprising physical prowess as she fights off both of them until a pack of good wolves allied with the seven dwarfs arrives. The narrator says that the queen fought the wolves like lionesses until they finally killed her. In the 1987-1988 television series The Charmings, Queen Lillian "Lily" White, portrayed by Judy Parfitt, is thrown into what they thought was a bottomless pit, but soon returns to cast a powerful curse on Snow White and her family. This curse banishes them all, including the queen herself and her magic mirror, into the modern world, where they live as the titular Charmings. The name comes from the fact that the prince who rescued Snow White is often called Prince Charming. The queen is forced to live with her family while trying to find a way to return herself to their own world. In the 1988 movie Who Framed Roger Rabbit, the queen appears in her witch disguise while Snow White supports her next to Cindy's wishing apples. In Happily Ever After, the 1989 animated sequel to the fairy tales, the late queen's brother, the evil wizard Lord Malice, arrives in the kingdom to avenge his sister on those responsible for her demise, Snow White and Prince Charming. Due to pressure by Disney lawyers, the queen herself does not appear in person and is only shown via a portrait and a bust statue. And the movie begins with her monster minions actually partying and celebrating her death. Her brother is eventually destroyed when he is transformed into a dragon and turned into a stone statue. The 1991 animated movie, The Magic Riddle, combines the story of Snow White with several other fairy tales in which the queen figure is a widowed stepmother, played by Robin Moore. She plans to marry her biological daughter, Bertha, to the handsome young Philippe, but he is in love with her stepdaughter, Cindy, a figure combining Snow White with Cinderella, who is aided by her grandmother. Following the advice of her magic mirror, the stepmother puts on a salesman disguise and visits the grandmother in the woods, tricking her into entering a castle from which there is no escape. And later Philippe and the dwarfs are trapped too. The stepmother, wearing another disguise devised by her magic mirror, hypnotizes Cindy with a magic apple to fall asleep. But in the commotion, she accidentally falls into a well. Eventually, Cindy and Philippe's wedding is held at what used to be her stepmother's house, where she and her daughter are to serve as maids just as Cindy used to. In the musical dark fantasy movie The Nightmare Before Christmas, a hag resembling the queen's hag form can be seen sitting next to the Grim Reaper during the town meeting. In the 1994-1995 anime television series The Legend of Snow White, Lady Crystal, voiced by Mari Yoku, a woman famed for her beauty and ruler of a small neighboring kingdom, comes to the Emerald Valley in order to marry King Conrad and raise his daughter, Snow White. As in the fairy tale, she turns out to be an evil and jealous woman who uses the black art of witchcraft to eliminate her rivals and obtain what she desires most: beauty and power. After the king's departure, the evil queen Crystal, aided by her bat familiar, makes her first attempt to kill Snow White, but the princess ends up in a house owned by 7 dwarves who protect her from all harm inflicted by her stepmother. Crystal then tries to take the life of Snow White several times. During the queen's final attempt, she abandons her goal of killing Snow White and instead puts her hated rival in an enchanted sleep by means of a poisoned apple in order to take over her youthful body for her own. Eventually, the queen turns out to be merely an unknowing puppet of her own demonic grandmother, Lady Helena, a powerful and immortal witch who dwelled inside the queen's mirror as the evil spirit and was the true source of her magic. 20 years earlier, Unable to bear the idea of growing old, Helena had found a way to keep herself forever young and beautiful by taking possession of another body and transferring her soul into it, in a planned, endless cycle of sacrifices to satisfy her vanity. The first victim of her ambition was her niece Crystal on her 12th birthday, whose soul became imprisoned in the mirror to allow the evil witch to control the queen's mind and actions. But Snow White's fiancé Prince Richard manages to kill the witch in a desperate fight, saving not only his beloved, but also freeing Crystal from the evil influence. In 1995, Runaway Brain, Mickey Mouse plays a Mortal Kombat-style video game featuring Dopey in battle with the witch. The main villain of the 2000 miniseries The 10th Kingdom is Christine White, more commonly referred to as the Evil Queen and portrayed by Diane Wiest. 200 years after the events told in the story of Snow White, the original Evil Queen, who was left to die, uses her mirrors to spy on Earth, where she finds Christine Lewis, a troubled former socialite whose husband Tony lost their fortune through bad investments and whose daughter Virginia was unplanned. After almost killing her daughter in a psychotic break, Christine joins the Queen in the realm of the Nine Kingdoms to be groomed as an apprentice of the original Evil Queen, now an undead hag known as the Swamp Witch, to be her successor as well as her instrument of revenge. Having repressed the memories of her past, Christine insinuates herself into the House of White, first as the nanny of Snow White's grandson, Prince Wendell White, and later as Wendell's stepmother, after poisoning his mother. Prior to the events of the miniseries, Christine is finally imprisoned for the subsequent murder via poison of Wendell's father. As the 10th Kingdom begins, she escapes to cause further destruction, and at the climax of the series, she is killed by the main protagonist, her daughter Virginia. In Mickey's Magical Christmas, snowed in at the House of Mouse, the Evil Queen appears as a cameo character. In the 2001 to 2003 series House of Mouse, the Queen made frequent cameos in crowd shots. In the episode The Stolen Cartoons, she gave a visual representation of Daisy's exclamation, "The crowd's getting ugly," by turning into her hag form. Earlier in that same episode, she was seen visiting the magic mirror in the lobby. In the episode Pluto Saves the Day, the Queen, in her hag form, was seen selling poisoned apples to Pete in his plot to cast the sleeping death spell on Mickey and friends. In Halloween with Hades, her hag form was shown entering the club at the beginning, leaving her basket of poisoned apples at Daisy's desk when she told her that they don't allow outside food. Later in the episode, Donald tried to scare the Queen, only for her to turn the tables by changing into her hag form. In the 2001 television movie Snow White, the fairest of them all, a self-loathing crone named Elspeth, Miranda Richardson, who is part of a race of strange humanoid creatures, is transformed into a beautiful queen by her brother, the green-eyed granter of wishes. She becomes jealous when the mirror reveals that her stepdaughter Snow White is the fairest in the land. But in this adaptation, she is driven more by insecurities than vanity. She also envies the affection that Prince Alfred shows toward her stepdaughter. She disguises herself as Snow White's deceased mother, Josephine, and succeeds in poisoning her with an apple. At the climax of the movie, the green-eyed one turns Elspeth into a withered old crone once again, and she is throttled to death off-screen by the dwarves whom she had once turned to stone. In 2002 Mickey's House of Villains, the Evil Queen can be spotted several times, usually in her witch form. Nina Hagen portrayed the Queen in the 2004 German comedy movie, Seven Dwarfs, Men Alone in the Wood. It is a parody story in which, for example, the poisoned apple scene is replaced by the one involving the Queen pretending to be a door-to-door salesperson of supposed youth-preserving coffins to trick Snow White, played by Nina Hagen's real-life daughter, Cosma Shiva Hagen. Louise Chamas appears as the Queen in Disneyland's Snow White, an enchanting musical in 2004 to 2006. In the 2005 historical fantasy movie, The Brothers Grimm, Monica Bellucci plays the villainous character that will inspire the fairy tale Evil Queen after the Brothers Grimm themselves face her, in the movie's version of Napoleonic-era Germany. Known as the Thuringen Queen or the Mirror Queen, many centuries earlier she was an extremely vain wife of the Frankish king Childeric I, obsessed with preserving her youth and beauty and being the fairest in the land. This led her to dabble in black magic, which backfired on her when she acquired a spell for eternal life that did not grant her eternal youth. Since then, she has been living in a tower, commanding various animals and monsters to abduct young girls so she could use their blood to regain her youth and beauty, which otherwise is only preserved in her magic mirror. The queen is destroyed after Jake Grimm shatters the mirror in the tower, making her werewolf minion transform into the woodsman, the hunter figure, and destroy the rest of the mirror by jumping out of the tower's window with it. The Queen, voiced by Suzanne Blakeslee, is the main villain in the 2005 direct-to-video animated movie Once Upon a Halloween, but appears only in the witch version despite misleading cover art. In it, the Queen plots to conquer Halloween and asks her cauldron to show several villains, and one of them helps her in her plan. The cauldron also explains its origins, as it is one of the cauldrons formerly owned by the three witches from the Black Cauldron. Eventually, the cauldron turns against the Queen and makes her vanish into nothingness. Nina Hagen also portrayed the Queen in its 2006 sequel, Seven Dwarves, The Forest is Not Enough, in which the character is known as the witch after having been dethroned. In the 2007 comedy movie Sydney White, Sarah Paxton plays Rachel Witchburn, the mean leader of the student council and the head of the sorority that Sydney White wants to attend. Jealous of Sydney, Rachel hires a hacker to destroy Sydney's computer files using a virus called the Poison Apple. Nevertheless, Sydney wins the debate and the election, becoming the new president, while Rachel is stripped of her sisterhood by her sisters because of her cruelty to them. In the 2007 animated movie Shrek the Third, the evil queen appears, voiced by Suzanne Blakeslee. She joins the team of Prince Charming to take over Far, Far Away, but at the end, she turns good and says that she always wanted to start a spa in France. Show Villains Tonight, first played in 2010, Hades calls forth Disney's most powerful villains for help to regain his evil. The Queen, portrayed by Kate Cousins, changing from the witch form, denies his invitation since Hades also invited Maleficent, her rival for Hades' affections and for the status of the most evil in the land. The Queen claims not to be Hades' girlfriend, but they just had an interesting weekend on Castaway Cay. In the end, the Queen and Maleficent put their differences aside, as all villains should stick together, and advise Hades to find evil within himself and not from others. In all 7 seasons of the 2011 to 2018 American TV series Once Upon a Time, the Queen, also known as Regina Mills, is portrayed by Lana Parrilla. Regina saves Snow White's life when they are younger, leading to Regina's unwilling marriage to Snow's father. When Snow inadvertently causes the death of Regina's true love, Regina grows vengeful and becomes the evil queen. After years of failing to kill Snow White, the evil queen eventually casts the dark curse, provided by her mentor Rumpelstiltskin, sending all the fairy tale characters to the real world and erasing their true memories. During the curse, Regina adopts a son, Henry. Later, Regina's curse is broken by Snow White's daughter Emma, Henry's biological mother, and Regina decides to try and redeem herself for her son. In time, Regina manages to make amends with Snow White, Emma, and her other enemies. She also meets her long-lost half-sister, Zelena the Wicked Witch, and falls in love with Robin Hood. In the 5th season, following Robin's death, Regina uses Dr. Jekyll's serum to separate herself from the darkness within her, creating the evil queen as a separate individual. In the 7th season, set many years later, Regina is crowned the Good Queen when the realms are united. In the 2012 movie Snow White and the Huntsman, Charlize Theron played the character of Queen Ravenna. The queen is depicted as vain, scheming, and power-hungry. On their wedding night, she kills the king and fears that Snow White will challenge her rule over the kingdom. The queen's obsession with power and beauty stems from childhood trauma, when her mother told her that beauty is a weapon to be used for protection. Additionally, the strength of her powers seems to correlate to her appearance, and both begin to fade as Snow White comes into her own. Her magic mirror assures her that the only way to render her powers and her youth permanent is to consume Snow White's heart, but she is ultimately killed by Snow White. In a more straightforward 2012 adaptation of the fantasy movie Grimm's Snow White, the evil queen's name is Queen Gwendolen, and she is played by Jane March. Gwendolen plans to marry Prince Alexander, and so, using elf magic, she plots to kill her stepdaughter Snow White, who loves him. But when she attempts a forced marriage between herself and Alexander, Snow White manages to break free and decapitate her evil stepmother before the ceremony can be finished. In the 2012 comedy fantasy movie Mirror, Mirror, Julia Roberts plays Queen Clementiana, a vain, insecure woman who married the king and magicked him into a savage beast using a special necklace. The queen spends her time organizing lavish parties in the palace and buying expensive dresses while neglecting the kingdom, which has caused the people to struggle to survive in harsh weather and poverty due to her high taxes. She often uses her magic to do her bidding, but it often backfires with unintended consequences. She uses a magic mirror to talk to a much younger reflection of herself, played by Lisa Roberts-Gillen, and the reflection often warns her not to use her magic for selfish, short-sighted purposes. In her attempts to kill Snow White, she creates 2 giant wooden puppets to attack the dwarf's home, and she also commands the beast to attack. Once Snow destroys the beast's necklace, the queen begins to age as her reflection states that she must pay the price for her use of magic, and she eats her own poisoned apple off-screen at Snow White's wedding. In the nighttime visual show Fantasmic, first played in 1992, the Queen, voiced by Louise Chamas, is the main villain and the leader of all the Disney villains. She is introduced in the second act, when her magic mirror tells her that there are now 3 princesses, Snow White, Ariel, and Belle, fairer than her. Enraged, the Queen transforms herself into a hag and uses the mirror and her cauldron to summon all the forces of evil, in the form of a collection of Disney villains to come to her aid. In Robot Chicken, the evil queen appears in the episode Stone Cold Steve Coldstone, in the segment Poisoned Apple. In the 2015 Disney Channel original movie, Descendants, the aged evil queen, played by Kathy Najimy, is among a host of other villains who have been imprisoned on a forbidden Isle of the Lost. And her daughter Evie, played by Sophia Carson, is among their offspring who are allowed to return into the kingdom to attend school alongside the offspring of iconic Disney heroes. The evil queen seemed to have joined forces with Maleficent, Jafar, and Cruella de Vil in trying to take over Auradon. In the American animated series Mickey Mouse, the evil queen appears in the episode Sock Burglar as one of the suspects interrogated by Minnie Mouse. In the English version of the 2019 Korean animated movie Red Shoes and the Seven Dwarfs, Gina Gershon voices Queen Regina. In it, Regina was brought to King White's castle accused of being a witch for punishment, but the king became bewitched by her beauty and fell for her. After Regina married the king and became the new queen, people started to disappear. After King White found out that Queen Regina was indeed an evil witch, she forced him to eat an apple that turned him into a giant wooden bunny. When Snow White steals the red shoes that grant immortality and eternal beauty to Regina and escapes the castle, Regina is furious and tries to find her, using the magic mirror and her ally Prince Average in her search. Eventually, she hunts down Snow White in the woods, where, disguising herself as Merlin, she takes Snow White back to the castle and turns her into a magic tree with another magic apple. However, the real Merlin comes to Snow White's rescue as he tackles Regina off the tower and electrocutes her with his lightning magic as they fall, killing her and ending her tyranny, and then restores Snow White and her father to their human forms. In the animated series The Wonderful World of Mickey Mouse, the Queen, in her old hag form, voiced by Tress MacNeille, plays a prominent role in the parody episode Once Upon an Apple, where she goes up against Mickey Mouse after the mirror tells her he is the fairest in the land, ending with Mickey dressing her up as Snow White and sending her off to find her prince. In the 2022 live-action adaptation movie Pinocchio, the evil queen appears in her witch form. In the 2022 short movie The Simpsons, Welcome to the Club, the evil queen, voiced by Tress MacNeille, and other Disney villains tell Lisa to join them. In 2023 Once Upon a Studio, the evil queen appears in the witch form on a group photo with other Disney characters. Gal Gadot portrayed the character of the evil queen in 2025's Snow White, a live-action reimagination of the 1937 animated movie.